Will everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the Palm Springs Parks and Recreation Commission meeting of the 20th of July, 2017. Roll call.
Commissioner Acker is absent. Commissioner Armstrong?
Here.
Commissioner Boley?
Here.
Commissioner Daniel is absent. Commissioner Darren?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Goodman?
Here.
Commissioner Navarro is absent. Vice Chair Young?
Here.
Chair Craig.
Here. Thank you. Thank you. Report of the posting of the agenda.
The agenda for today's meeting was posted at the Leisure Center, City Hall, and the city's website by last Thursday, June 15th, by 5 p.m.
Thank you. Minutes, did everybody get a chance to look them over? Any corrections, additions, comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention. Any correspondence?
We have none, thank you, today.
Thank you. This time is reserved for public comments. If there's anybody that has a comment they'd like to get up and discuss, please come up and state your name.
Hi, my name's Paul Henriksen, resident of Palm Springs. And next week, probably in this room, Village Fest Board is going to have an open hearing to consider making Village Fest a smoke-free event. And I'm just here to remind you about that and ask for your support and keep it in mind, because it's really the most important issue in the city. Now, that may sound like a big statement, but it really is, because it's about the lives, health, and wellness of everyone. We're talking about not smoking bans, but public space smoking bans. And Village Fest and other events, we really should, by now, have smoke-free, but they're not yet. So the reason it's so important is if you don't have your life, your health, or your wellness, nothing else matters. Not corruption scandals at City Hall, not leaf blowers, not vacation rentals, nothing. So keep that in mind. Please support making Village Fest a smoke-free event, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Seeing none? City Manager's report?
We have none for today, thank you.
Thank you. Now we're moving. Item number 1, the city's homeless task force update. Comments, recommendations? Wow.
Chair Young, Vice Chair Young is our liaison to the city's homeless task force, and so he was going to give us an update of their most recent meeting and where we're at on our homeless.
Thank you.
So I attended the last homeless task force meeting, and at the point that I wrote my notes, it was Roy's is closing, but Roy's is closed, at least in its current configuration. The facility is going to become a county facility, housing for that will be accessed through referrals, but it is not of the nature of a 24-hour homeless facility. So it will no longer fulfill the objectives that Roy's fulfilled, and there is not currently an opening date for the unit that is going to be placed there at this time. There's a great deal of work to be done. Apparently, it will be a very lengthy opening. Somebody mentioned 2018, and they said, no, it should be ready before then. But apparently, they're really going to strongly reconfigure whatever's there, which I guess that's what the county does. A building that was formerly a firehouse, as I understand it, on Dillon and Indian Canyon is being looked at for a Roy's type facility. And currently, there's a need for an organization to operate the facility. So the task force is working on getting the requirements defined to select an organization that would be running it. Isn't that I'm not sure what the group was called previously, the Jewish Family?
It was only San Diego.
From San Diego?
Yeah, Jewish Family Services.
They won't be stepping in to be running. There will be others being interviewed to do so. Well in the Desert is looking at a facility. In fact, it has cleared Planning Commission as of their last meeting at 441 South Collie and Celia, and I believe it is being put in front of council tomorrow night.
Yes.
It is a building on, it's the only building on Collie and Celia in that block. It's behind, if you were on Palm Canyon, the building that sits behind it is the old hamburger stand that shut down.
Burger King.
Burger King. I understand from a meeting I attended last night that there is some business objection to doing this, but it is moving forward at this point and will be voted on. So there's a good chance that Well in the Desert will be functional again. Although I drove by the building and actually through the parking lot, and it doesn't look to me like anything that could be functional within 2 to 3 months. So, I mean, it looks like it needs some work. So I do worry about, this doesn't seem like it will be a resolution for homeless heat right now. The 5 existing things that we're using will have to fulfill that. Chief Reyes and Captain Peters discussed the Community Outreach Resource Program, which is called the CORE program. This program is, in fact, Captain Peters has been affiliated with it when he was in India, and it was very successful. And what it does is, it has we actually have many of the requirements in place for the CORE program, with the exception of housing and case management. Housing would be satisfied by the former firehouse on Dillon and Indian. Case management would be satisfied as a requirement of the group that is hired to facilitate sort of replacing Roy's. And the concept is that the mad cycle of homelessness is hopelessness. Many of the homeless have long lists of misdemeanors with fines, and at a point it becomes overwhelming, even if the individual wants to get on their feet and get up and running start the road to recovery. With the fees and the fines that they have, there's just no way that can be accomplished. Well, through the CORE program, people who have misdemeanors, not felonies, can in fact work with the public defender's office, and if identified as a good candidate, will actually, they'll present a case to the district attorney, and in that case, it will be determined that this individual, if they complete a program, which will be a minimum of 90 days, could be something greater than that, in a housing facility, then in fact all of their fines and record could be expunged. So this would mean a homeless person who's got all of those, fines, and I'm hearing numbers up to $50,000 in fines over a period of time could actually go away. They would be clean, sober, and off drugs, and moving in the direction that would help them to be able to get into housing and even do a work program. This is apparently a very successful program elsewhere in California, and it really does seem like a great opportunity. So the things that keep us from that right now are the physical place for the individuals to reside, and then secondly, the organization to run the community. The 5 cooling centers that were identified were James O. Jesse's Desert Highland Unity Center, Demuth Community Center, Leisure Center, the Palm Springs Main Public Library, and Wellwood Murray Public Library. The other topic that was covered in the report was, or in the meeting, was the 2017 count, it was significantly higher than the 2016 count. This isn't necessarily an indication that there are more homeless in Palm Springs, but it is an indication that it was a rainy day. Many people had not left their campgrounds as the point in time counters were going out. And for that reason, they were able to record 138 homeless, which is a 66% increase over 2015, which was counted in at 83 at that point in time. But there's still a sense that even the number 138 is not probably close to what we're actually experiencing. And the task force is asking that any organizations like ourselves that have interest in helping them get a count, we might participate in going out and doing the homeless point in time count next January. And there's, I guess, a little training that they go through. It isn't something that seems very dangerous. It seems relatively simple, but it will help in that as we identify the numbers of homeless, that's actually what ends up getting keyed into the support dollars that come back to our community. So it's not like we want to brag about having 200 or 300 homeless, but if that's the case, that's what's going to help us get funded. So that's the sum of the report that I have at this point in time. Any questions? Thank you.
I have one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned about going out in January and capturing some data. Are you maybe suggesting, or would you suggest as we get closer to the time period that we as a group think about maybe adding our services? I think Human Rights Commission, I think they add their services. Is that maybe what was discussed?
I didn't offer us up, but one of the things that both Jeff and Jenny asked is the more people that participate, it would be helpful. My immediate thought was I would hope that all council members next time would be able to participate in that. And it could just fall on a day that somebody's not available. But if our group is interested in doing that, I think it would be remarkable. I do have an interest in doing that. And if you do, as it comes closer, I could bring it back to you all and let you know the date.
Yeah, I'd love a 60-day reminder.
Perfect. I will do
Is
that.
there any issue on a commission doing something together? Being part of something?
You know, I'd have to check. It would be no different than if council was doing something. So,
Okay.
I mean, potentially, if you were doing it as a group, we could just post it as an adjourned meeting, and as, you know, the commission has taken on the project of helping with the count of our homeless, and if somebody wanted to join us, they could come join us.
So it's
Well-
something
But
you
I
can
will-
bring back to us 60 days before and we can discuss.
But I can clarify that with the clerk's office. Just, I mean, again, if we're going to have more than a quorum of our commission doing something, we just need to post it just because of.
Right, well, and my thought would be not necessarily that we would do it as the team, but we might drop ourselves onto, you know, be
Other.
placed with other teams, and that way we could avoid that. But,
Right.
but if you could clarify either way, if there is any issue.
That way we can discuss it
Yeah,
a few months out.
absolutely. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments or not? Good report. Budget updates?
Was it last week? No. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, the city's budget was before city council for consideration, and after a very lengthy conversation of things that were going on, they finally adopted the city's budget for 2017, 2018. However, they still wanted to take a look at a couple areas. Going into this coming year, the city is down about $6.5 million that they need for the unfunded PERS liability. So there was a heavy discussion on where would the city come up with that $6.5 million. You know, the city has about $21 million in reserves, and there was some discussion of, well, maybe we take it all out of reserves, and one council member was thinking, well, we've built our reserves up, do we want to start depleting it, you know, this year, because then come next year, it's going to be another $6 million we need to come up with. And during this whole process of what they were going to do, we had some discussions about recreation. I prepared the report for the commission, or for the council, dealing with what our programs are, what our numbers were, how much it cost me in staff costs to run those programs, what the city was subsidizing those programs by. Majority of our programs are, a larger percentage are more non-residents and residents. And so there was some discussion about what do we need to do with recreation to bring our fees more in line so that we're recouping more of our cost. And so I've been tasked with trying to put together a fee study to determine if the fees we're charging are appropriate. But I'll have to, I didn't get a chance to say much to him this morning when I was with Councilman Roberts, but he asked the question, if we raise our fees, what ultimately could be the outcome of that? And so, you know, if we raise our fees too high, especially with non-residents, we'll lose those individuals because they just can't afford, they wouldn't be able to afford to pay. So then we're back to square one again. We're still subsidizing the program, but probably at a higher percentage, and you still have the same amount of staff. So you either are going to have to eliminate staff in order to try and make things even out, and then you get into a union issue. So I've spent last week talking with the Desert Recreation District on the recent fee study they did, but the information they gave me wasn't real informative. So I'm going to get with our consultant that did our master plan, maybe give me a little lead on some of the other cities that may have done some recent studies on fee increases, and how, what is it the city wants to do, and maybe get the commission involved of, where is it as a Parks and Recreation, or as a city, what is it we want to provide to our residents and to our community. And so
have you seen or heard of increases in Parks and Rec in Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert at all?
Well, Desert Recreation District every year, they had a study done in, I think originally it was approved in like 2012. And so every year they go back to their board with recommendations for increases. And theirs is structured a little different. They have their area where, okay, these are the programs we're going to subsidize, and most of those programs are events. Parades, are we going to charge people to go to parades? No, we're going to subsidize those. Say we were doing an event, say with the Lions, and we might want to charge a nominal fee just to cover some costs for that event. But those were that area. They had one that they called merit pricing of, here's what we're going to charge for the program. We want to cover somewhere between 50 and 100%, and the board decides what is it they want to recover. It was the supplies and materials to do the activity, staff's direct time to do it, and then maybe a coordinator who oversaw the event, their time associated with it. And then obviously there's the full recovery cost. That would be, if it cost you $100,000 to do it, you needed to bring in $100,000 worth of revenue. So, July 1, across the board, the city's doing a 5% increase. Last year we had a 4% increase in all of our fees. And so probably over the next, and that may be something that the program and fees subcommittee might start wanting to work on, and I'll get information hopefully in the next month of what we need to do moving forward with fees, and hopefully getting some direction from Dr. Reddy, and maybe some direction from our council subcommittee. So the budget did get approved. A couple good things that came out of it is for a couple years I've had a vacant 3-quarter position at one of the facilities. I finally took that position and spread it across to 3 other people to make 3 people full-time. Desert Highland, we had a half-time position out there, and I was trying to move it to 3-quarter, and actually Dr. Reddy gave me basically all my personnel changes that I wanted, so we'll be hiring a full-time person for Desert Highland to replace the half-time that we lost to the county. So we seem to be okay. He approved everything that I requested, so that's a good thing. There was some questions of, during talking about this $3.5 million they needed to come up with was, if we're going to hire new employees, because there were some new employees that are on the list, say we hire them, and 2 minutes later we say, oh, sorry, now you got to go because, we need to save the money. And city manager wasn't ready to, say that was going to be the case. And there are some positions that are immediately moving forward with, I think the there was a transient, I think, transportation position for the police department for transporting, transporting prisoners from here to Banning Beaumont area. And then I think moving forward with the positions for officers for the airport, because it's being funded by the airport fund. So David has till, I think, October, end of October he has to come up with how we're going to come up with $3.5 million, because I think they agreed to take $3 million from the city reserves, and so he'll have to come with another $3.5 million of recommendations. So
I got the feeling that they were going to take $3 or $3.5 million from the reserve, and the other $3 million they were going to take from, cut it from other things that they were giving to make up the $3 million.
okay.
I heard that out there on the drums.
Okay, could be. You know, there was a lot of things that were thrown out there. There was a discussion of, you know, buzz, you know, that's about $1 million a year. You know, does the city want to continue to fund that? And of course, right now that's funded out of Measure J funding. It's not coming out of the general fund. There was some discussion of maybe the city doesn't fund the special events, the grant sponsorships that they give to all the organizations. That's about $800,000 or $900,000 the city could save. But then again, still, you know, you're still looking at $3.5 million you need to come up with, and where do you know, find that? So.
This good news just keeps going, doesn't it? Go ahead, please.
I don't know if this is the right time, but I read in the paper, it's kind of interesting, under the ops, that somebody had suggested, because I think, Vicki, right after this discussion or shortly before, it ran in the Desert Sun. It was on the front page of the paper.
Yes.
And so I thought that was interesting. There was this ed-op from someone in Palm Springs, and they were wondering, and I don't know if this is really even possible, but maybe worthy of some exploration, of maybe working with other cities. So really looking at who's using the programs, who's using the services, and then having some sort of arrangement with the city of origin. That was the word that this person used. So that it wouldn't impact the actual user of the program. And, you know, maybe there would be some sort of discussion or
well, I know that,
negotiation
you know,
around that.
Cathedral City, because I was on the commission there, and we went through this budget and stuff probably in the early 2000s of, you know, what were they going to fund or not. And they, you know, they got to the point where they shut the water off to all their parks. Because that was an uproar with the neighbors, because then the trees started dying, the grass was drying. So they created a lot of landscape districts and lighting districts to help fund watering their parks. And then it was the whole thing, well, recreation, is that really necessary? So they completely cut out their recreation. Even though they still have a Parks and Rec Commission, they do not have a recreation program. And I know that last year when Kevin was here from the Desert Recreation District, he was meeting or had already met with the city of Cathedral City to look at bringing them in under the district. And I don't know what the outcome of that was, but there was also some talk of, you know, maybe we, you know, what are our numbers? Is a good portion of our non-residents coming from Cathedral City? Probably are. You know, maybe we get with the city to say, hey, you know, a lot of your residents are using Palm Springs programs. Is there a way that, you know, maybe the city could look at funding some of that cost? So,
I mean, is that a viable conversation that we could enter? I know when we looked at the skate park, we definitely had people coming from other communities. For whatever reason, they could be employees here and commuting back and forth. But is it worth a conversation to sit down with the city and say, you know, we have a feeling that you've got, you know, 75 users, and we'd really like for you to make a contribution of $7,500 or, you know, whatever.
right, and that would be something that, you know, we could take a look at, and that would probably have to come from council to council type of thing.
Okay.
Would be, you know, my suggestion. I mean, you know, I don't know if staff would want to go to, you know, the Cathedral City's council and saying, hey, by the way, you know, of this program we have 100 kids, and 70 of them are coming from Cathedral City. Is there a possibility that Cathedral City would consider help funding that program?
And interesting, with the skate park, it wasn't Cathedral City. They weren't the bulk of the numbers. But I don't know, I really appreciated somebody writing in the paper, and I think that when our community has ideas or discussions, that it's worthy of us having some sort of exploration. And maybe it's something that is in the fee and program committee to discuss. But I would hate that to fall on either I don't want to say deaf ears, but I would not want to put it to rest and not take something that could be an idea.
And I think it might be a matter to see how we come out with our fee study. You know, because I've done a couple different things I had to put together, like, for the council of, okay, here's what this program costs the city. But then I took the next step and broke it down. What is that additionally costing per person, per month? And it was, you know, very nominal depending on the program.
Right, and you have hard costs. So if you have a full-time staff person that can accommodate, that's what, I don't know, is there's a law here, like it's schools, is you might have 1 to every 25 or 1 to every 50 little people. And so when that shifts, then you, right, if it's 30 to 1, but you can have 50 to 1, why not have 50?
Yeah.
To tag on what you're saying, the Citizens Police Academy that Palm Springs does 3 times a year, we're the only city that does it. So when you see somebody graduated, when they do the graduation, and they belong to the Citizens on Patrol in Palm Desert, Citizens on Patrol in Rancho Mirage, they all graduated from here. So it ended up coming up with, there was a fee for it, and it's $30 to go through the class. And it's been proposed now that the people that are coming from the other cities pay a higher fee because they're taking everything from our city and going back and using it in theirs. Did you go through the Citizens Police Academy?
Absolutely, yes.
Was it, am I right, was it $30 or is it not a fee?
No, there wasn't any fee for us, and there wasn't last year because my husband attended it, and there was no fee.
Then it's being proposed, looking into the idea, because X percentage of your class, they were not all Palm Springs people.
Correct. And it wasn't just the COPs, there were also just average citizens from other cities that participated.
Do those other cities require their residents to take this class to be on their patrol?
Absolutely.
Yes.
They do.
So this is the only place that it's taught.
There are even people from Riverside that come in and take the class.
It's sort of amazing that this is the home of it all, but yet Citizens on Patrol are throughout the valley. So, but they all take the class here.
Vicki, question, back to the budget. One of the things that I heard and I am concerned about is there's this sense of children of Palm Springs and then others. And the others is a category that I've got an issue with. If people work in Palm Springs, I believe that their children should participate in our programs because that contributes to our city by having their parents working here. Is there a way that we can start to measure anybody who doesn't live in Palm Springs, whether they're just an individual who sits in or if they're an individual who is the child of an employee of a company in Palm Springs? Can we make that part of our...
We could do that, because I think it was actually one of the conversations that council was having and considering was if someone actually worked in the city of Palm Springs, then they would potentially benefit from the resident fee because they're contributing to the community. We have a couple of people that they come from Banning Beaumont area. They work in the city, so their kids are coming and going to school in the Palm Springs School District because their parents are working here. So...
I will tell you, at the Police Advisory Council board last night, we had the superintendent of schools for this district, and she brought such remarkable information that I had no idea that California was on a decline, and it's not just California, Palm Springs was actually mirroring that, and the enrollment is going down. Also, we had a member who had some really good questions, a former educator, who had a lot of questions about, so are we going out to get kids to bring them back to teach in Palm Springs? But one of the things that came up is housing in Palm Springs is not necessarily affordable. So as a teacher, you might graduate, and in your first year or two, you're not able to afford Palm Springs, so you're living in Banning or Beaumont. And then what happens is you get offered a job at Banning or Beaumont, and the choice is, do I go 40 minutes to Palm Springs or closer to home? And so, you know, this is sort of spreading across things. So I think it is something that's going to be weighing on us very heavily, but, I'd like to understand how many of our children are the children of people who kind of can't afford to live here, but do work here, and see if we can't at least get a capture of that. To see where we are.
That could be really easy to calculate, because my staff are very familiar with all the parents, and they know them. They know whether, especially our after-school program. Camp a little bit different because we have so many people. But with our after-school program, we're very easy because they know them. They, it's like, oh, John Smith's running late today because something happened at work, and knows exactly where they're at. So we could work on that.
Just a couple of things. I did want to go back in time a little bit. I think the commission a few years ago did recommend these fees to be increased and have a differential for residents versus non-residents. They went to the city council, and there were parents from Cathedral City, I think, who came and brought a whole bunch of kids. The council voted it down and said they would wait some other time. So there already is sort of a motion that the commission, I think, supported, right, increasing these fees, just some history. But one of my concerns was, and there was an article in the paper about this Tiny Tots program. Like, how much money are we talking about in terms of, the cost of the program versus the revenue? Because it seemed odd to me that when we're talking about this $6.5 million, that there was such a focus on recreation programs when the city has, tens of millions of dollars elsewhere. So what exactly, how much money are we talking about? Almost seems like a red herring to me.
I don't have my report with me, but I think the Tiny Tot program, the city, at the Leisure Center, we're subsidizing that program about 62%, 63%, somewhere around in there. Summer camp, we're at about 46%, and I think the after-school program was about 51% subsidy based on what we were bringing in revenue, what we were paying to cover staff costs. Now, none of that cost involved any administrative costs, which is allowed by the law. We didn't take any of my time into consideration, any of finances time, any of my office staff time that has all the entries into the computers. It was straight, this is how much we spend in salaries with benefits, and this is how much money we bring in. This is what the difference is, and this is the city's subsidy.
Right. So, I think it would be interesting going forward exactly the amount of money we're talking about, because the impression, I think maybe reading that article is like, oh gosh, we, gutted these recreation programs or charged a whole bunch for people who may work in Palm Springs but live elsewhere, that it's really going to make a huge dent into the $6.5 million. And I'd love to know exactly how much that would really cost, because there seems to be, bigger fish to go after than this program. Maybe it is, maybe we should raise the fees, but I just wanted to kind of put some clarity to that. The other thing I was concerned about in some of this discussion about the budget is the golf courses. And it seems to me that there's been this movement in the last year or two to talking about the golf courses and the debt, and we have to pay that debt back in some way, whether it's a golf course or not. But I did want to just remind everybody listening, when you hear about that the golf courses right now are considered park space, and if you remove all that open space from the city of Palm Springs and build homes there, we're going to be very under the national standard of what we should have for parkland. So, part of that discussion would have to be, I would think, if we're going to get rid of the golf courses, where's the other open space? Where's all the park space going to come from? Because we don't want to be, so low on the percentage of what we should have for open space. So I think that's an important discussion or point people should consider when they're talking about the golf courses. And my last question, though, about on the budget. So did they do the capital expenses that we were talking about in the last meetings, or is that another part of the process?
No, they have not done anything with what would be funded through Measure J or just capital in general, nor did they do the sponsorship allocations either. Normally, I'm going to guess it's going to happen sometime in July, and I think last year they had a meeting in August, and we did that in August or September, but obviously we're going to be dark in August, so I don't know when that will be on the agenda for discussion for capital and or the grant allocations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Summer camp update.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Goodman for her efforts in securing a grant for children of 3 of the Palm Springs Unified School Districts, Cielo Vista, Vista Del Monte, and Kauai Elementary School, and securing a grant to help fund those children to come to summer camp. I think we ended up with about 13 on the list that actually submitted their paperwork. And we have about a third of them that have come in so far and are really excited about coming to summer camp. I had a lengthy conversation with one of the parents yesterday that she was so excited that she goes, you know, how much does it really cost? She goes, you know, if my daughter really likes it, I want her to continue. She goes, you know what, I think I can afford that. So maybe when this grant part's done, I'll come up with the money so she can continue coming here.
Nice.
So it's kind of, they're all jazzed and excited and, you know, and first of all, so I want to thank you for that. Again, it's giving, this mother who came in yesterday said, you know, I'm really surprised. I graduated from Palm Springs High School in 2003. I had no idea you were even here. And I go, well, we've only been here since like 74, 75, so not where she was at when she was at Palm Springs High School, but how she missed us, I'm not sure. Currently, we have about 212 total children who have registered for camp. Last week, the first week of camp, we had about 130 kids that were in attendance. This week, we're at about 150. And I'm not sure where they're coming from, but they're kind of coming out of the woodwork and just coming in and finding out about us. And kids are partaking in all the activities. My staff worked really hard to try to put together a good program for them. Last week, the theme of the week was called Catch the Spirit, so they were doing all kinds of crazy things. They had a crazy hair day, crazy sock day, dress up as your favorite sports personality. This week they're doing Wacky World of Sports, and they're going to be building cardboard boats, and we'll eventually have a race at the end of the week in the pool to see who built the best boat and used enough duct tape to make it hold together. So they're doing a lot of crazy things.
What's the age range?
Going into first grade through 8th grade. So they have to have completed kindergarten and going into the 8th grade. So once they hit high school, they're not eligible to come, and so I get a good portion of those young adults who come and volunteer. And I have about 17 of them that are volunteering this year that are either going to be a freshman or going to be sophomores in high school. Because again, they're...
Some of those come out of the program when they were younger?
They do, and actually a lot of my paid staff came from my program.
It's win-win.
So camp's going along just fine. The weather's kind of put a little kink into things, so today we switched some things around today. Instead of being out at the water in the middle of the day in 120-degree weather, we switched and we did the pool early this morning, and then we did our morning activities this afternoon. So we're having to be flexible and juggle around. It's either flex our schedule or we don't go to the water. So, kids like being in the water, so.
Can I add something
Sure.
also? So there's still actually some grant money that is left. When we circulated to all of the schools, this was the first year we've done that, and I think it was a big surprise for families. They just didn't really know what to do, and they were unfamiliar with the camp. And I think that we'll be able to actually do more and more as the program grows, which is our intention. We had a lot of parents who said that they couldn't participate just because of the commuting, dropping their kids off and picking their kids up. So just kind of share that out loud as that was some feedback that I got. So I was a little disappointed that we had a handful of people who couldn't participate, who would have liked to. So that's kind of a thought. So there's an extra little pool of money that we can make a contribution to either pick up some of that subsidy on the scholarships that you're currently doing or fund, help to contribute to the field trip. So we'll work on that together.
Okay.
So there's a little bit more money, which is nice.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And then also I think next week we might be doing a training day.
Yes. Waiting for the date, so my staff's anxiously waiting.
Oh, good. Okay,
yeah.
so we have we have 11 of our elementary schools that have recess coaches, and we have a very robust training program for those coaches, and those coaches run programs at recess on the playground. And there's always been a conversation of having after-school staff as well as summer staff trained in that same methodology so that there is this like seamless experience from school to maybe ACES or after school and even at a camp setting And so on the 28th, we have a training scheduled for Vicky's staff to come in the evening and go through PlayWorks, play modalities and systems, which I think they'll have a lot of fun doing.
Yeah, they're excited.
Cool.
Yeah, so we'll have probably more than the 12 that we wanted to have, but that's
Required a
okay.
minimum of 12 people, and maybe
Yeah.
we'll send the email out and you can pop your head in and play a little Foursquare or run around and play tag or do a couple of call and responses. Learn what it's like to be a youth development worker.
And we'll be doing mostly in the pavilion, and obviously we can expand to the outside if we need to, and 6 to 9 is the time frame we set, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it'll be 6 to 9 on the 28th.
On the 28th.
If you could email us with some of these things, so if, for commissioners to be able to drop in and experience it, it would help.
Yeah. And then just to not leave them out of the mix, James O'Jesse, they're averaging about 30. I think they had a little over 30 kids last week, and I think they're right around the same numbers this week. I haven't had a chance to talk with Jarvis. He's been busy and I've been busy, and we kind of are touching about other things until we forget about asking about camp. So they're doing well out there. I didn't think to let them know not to go to the pool this afternoon, and I know, so I was coming back and running some errands before I came to the meeting. I saw the van leaving. I said, ooh, they came swimming at 1 o'clock today, so I'll have to get with them to remind them. If we get to a certain temperature, we need to not have the kids outside, especially in the water. So.
So real quickly, I was at opening day of camp, and it was really exciting. The kids were just wild. They just had a great time. And I stopped a couple of parents and said, why do you come here? Why did you choose us instead of anything else? And two of the answers were, I went to this camp myself, and my kids are going to go to this camp. There was just a real sense of they liked what was going on with the program and stuff. So I actually sort of volunteered. I'm working with, I think it's the 5th grade, the 5th team,
Well,
the barbecue.
oh, yeah.
So there's a barbecue on I have to talk to them because their candidates are only available on the 5th, not the 6th. And it's going to be a barbecue for heroes. So it's the champions that the children have, and we're asking our police chief Reyes and Chief Nalder to come and bring EMTs, and I'm hoping that Lieutenant Demaray can come, and possibly an explorer or search and rescue, and they will talk. They'll have about an hour for just to share some of the experiences of police and fire and EMTs and stuff. And then the last 45 minutes will be barbecue, and they'll get fed, and they'll get to eat with the kids and answer their questions and stuff. So it's just exciting to see some of the things that the teams are putting together as they own a week and developing them and stuff. And
Do you have a date on that?
it's currently, the target date is July 5th, and it would be from 11 to 12:45. 11 to 12 will be when the heroes are talking about their particular business, fire or police, and then they'll be feeding them, and everybody will be eating from 12 to 12:45. The camp is just doing great. It is really exciting to walk in, whether you are there for kickoff or the other day I just had to stop by to talk to the team, and the kids are just having a great time. And I saw some kids coming in. One little kid said, I know it's my first day, Mom, but could you leave? I thought it was so cool. It's like she just wanted to go off and be with the kids. So it really is a great environment. I'm excited about it.
Pickleball event at James O'Jesse?
So I have a little report for you, and in fact, I'm going to pass some pictures around. It was really a great event. Just pass them around. I think. It was held at the Desert Highlands Wellness Center, and it was actually held in conjunction with the Pickleball and the Desert Highlands Wellness Committee. They had a free barbecue, and it was held on June 8th. They served over 100 meals. 50 were served to pickleball players, city staff, local residents, local gym members, city council candidates, Palm Springs firefighters came from Local 3601. Sid, Carol, and I were there, and Master Chef McCarvey Crawford from Desert Highlands Wellness Committee provided the barbecue and the side dishes to rave reviews. Everybody was just wild about the food. The other members of the Desert Highlands Wellness Committee provided support in working with Chef Crawford and preparing and presenting the food. The event included a demonstration by an 86-year-old senior Olympic champion, gold medalist Ron Schmeck, and other players ranging in ages from 16 to 86. The local firefighters and paramedics from Local 3601 took the challenge to play pickleball. In fact, as they were coming in, as I was leaving, I said, "Hey guys, are those tennis shoes? Because you're going to have to play. They're not going to let you eat unless you play." And I later saw the pictures. They played and had a good time. Some of the youth that we got to see when we were there, they actually asked them to come out of the gym, the training room, and just spend a few minutes with them. Well, they couldn't get them off the courts. They started playing, and pretty soon they picked it up, and they were actually keeping up with some of the other people. So it was pretty exciting. And they said afterwards that they'd be back, and I really think they did. In fact, the event ran an hour over so that they could continue to play. So it was extremely successful, and I really appreciated. I got the report from Dino, who is kind of the
Dean
chair.
Mangione is kind of the,
Yeah.
he's our ambassador to, he's the West Coast ambassador for the United States Pickleball Association, so.
He really is a great guy. And to answer questions about pickleball, that day, for some reason, my husband and I decided to try a restaurant downtown, and we ended up going through a department store right next to the restaurant, and 5 people were there with pickleball shirts on, and I said, "Were you just at the event?" And they said, "No." 3 of them were moving from Florida. Apparently, they live in a community in Florida where there are 160 courts in that community. And so it seems to be nationwide and ever-growing. And so I continue to think that this is a pretty interesting thing. All of you are invited at some point in time to go for lessons. I know they're doing it at the DeMuth Center, 8 o'clock Monday morning, and they're indoors, and they kind of want you to train indoors until you're comfortable with it, and then you can move on to the other courts. But I'd say it'd be a great thing to try. Any questions?
I just have a comment. My mom, who moved out probably about a year ago, she just turned 76, and she got into pickleball, and she says, "Dave, I'm doing this pickleball. Have you ever heard of pickleball?" And I said, "All the time." So it's funny. It's amazing, and I'm happy to see so many seniors getting into it, and the younger kids too. That's great.
Yeah.
And this was in the paper. It said, "Why didn't we do this sooner?" And it's an ad for another one of these complex of homes that are being built right now, and people are playing pickleball there. And I live at Kenyon Sands at Gene Autry 111, and it's interesting. 3 years ago, it came up about pickleball, and the homeowners on the annual vote voted no. They thought it would be too noisy on the tennis courts that we have there. And last month, they voted again, and it passed. So next week, they're striping it. And they're making one of the 4 tennis courts a pickleball court. And Tamarisk, the country club, now has 2 courts. So it's definitely something that I'm thrilled because we were innovators of being enthused about this when they came to us.
Can I ask a question? Where, last month's meeting, we had some public comments. It prompted a lot of discussion. There were budget, I believe there was something in the budget that was presented, and if everything passed, Was that included in the budget that was, I'm curious of where we left
No,
that
because that was
last
part
month.
of capital,
Capital.
and capital has not been addressed
That
yet.
hasn't been addressed, okay, so that's part of capital. So I don't know where we left it and what our next steps would be. Do we revisit this in August? Will you prompt us that the city's going to be looking at capital projects?
They
Should we
will
think it's
be.
off the burner because of the deficit that they're expecting?
Well, they definitely will be, especially for the Major J aspect, and I know on the list, the pickleball was part of the unfunded at that time. There were only like 5 major projects that they were looking to fund for the coming year, because they've also allocated money for streets still, and some bike paths, and then the money they're allocating towards the, what is it, the neighborhood groups
PS1.
last year of their
Hotspots.
hotspots, yeah. So,
And didn't the city just secure a grant for hotspots? I just remember hearing that a very large amount came in.
I haven't heard,
Okay.
do not know. So. But yeah, I'm not sure when the capital will be going forward to council for approval.
Well, next month is July, and they're off in August, so it wouldn't be, you think it wouldn't be till September?
It could be. Looking at, if I can recall, looking at the agenda, neither one of those items were on the agenda for discussion, capital and/or sponsorship. So that may not happen until September.
Because they are down in August.
Right. Sorry. Okay.
But you're right, if you find that something is brewing or that, if you could let us know,
Absolutely.
just so we can also be there for comments.
Mm-hmm. Great update, thank you.
It says discussion of meeting time recommendation. Councilwoman Fote had asked me when I sat in on the interviews for the, potential new members that will be joining us. The council votes tomorrow night, and there were Miguel, who's on the commission, was there for being considered for re-upping, and there were 2 other candidates who were interviewed for it. There was another gentleman who was a candidate, but then we were told that he had already been approved for another one, sitting back there. David, I'm sorry we lost you.
Where's he going?
Is it Human Rights?
Human Rights Commission.
Human Rights Commission. So you can apply for more than one, and he had been interviewed before. Anyhow, the council will vote tomorrow evening, and in the July meeting, we will be having new members joining this body. The Councilwoman Fote said to me that she thought that we could be losing people not wanting to apply for the commission who have children because of the time of day that we hold the meeting, and asked about moving the meeting. I said that I had not been aware of anybody from the clerk's office where this had come up or because of the time. The people that were interviewed were all asked that question by Councilman Mills, and Councilman Fote did the interview for the Parks and Rec. All the candidates that were asked said they could attend at 2:30. That it was not, the recommendation was from council member about us moving our meetings to 5 and changing the sustainability. I said that could affect members that are on the commission already. But she asked for it to be brought up for discussion. So I brought it up for discussion. Is there any comments or feelings about this, that we remain where we are?
When we all joined the council, we were all asked that same question about time. We all were able to fit that time in. If we moved it, I think it's going to impede on other commitments that I know that I have, because I have other evenings that I do for other organizations, and probably other people have the same thing. I would leave it where it is because it works for the standing commission.
Thank you.
I would agree with Alan. This time works for our group. Everybody does a pretty good job of making it at this time. So, and again, this was the time I was, as I committed to it, this was the time, so I would like to see it stay here.
How do you feel, Carol?
For me,
I know you're working.
yeah, exactly. But as everyone else said, when I signed on, I committed to be here at this time. So if the consensus is to keep it at this time, that's fine with me.
Travis?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I understand the point. I'm not sure that it would actually follow through, you know, that we would actually get more people with children. I would see some people having issues in the evening as well, and this was the time. And when I saw the agenda, I was concerned that we have some new people coming in who, you know, relied on our meeting time being this time, and if we were going to make any decision, I think we should wait until, you know, they're on the commission for a while as well.
A couple of thoughts come up. I think it's not a new conversation as far as timing of commissions, and it's always actually come from public participation, is that it's very hard for the public to get to commission meetings during the day. So I know that, you know, I've been privy to those conversations and moving meetings so that it's more accommodating to the community. So I think that it's definitely a worthy conversation to have. I think before there is a real discussion around changing the time, because we think, or someone might think, that it'll increase participation at a commission level, we should probably look to survey those stakeholders and see what families and parents are involved in Parks and Recreation as a participant, and to see if there is some level of interest. And really where that interest level lies before even considering changing the time, because it might be more accommodating for their attendance as a commissioner. And I think that if somebody's really interested in Parks and Rec, really interested, oftentimes they can find accommodations for the little people, since it was brought up that maybe they can't make this time because of family, or school is out at 3, or on Wednesdays it's a half day. And I think that there's some programs and there might be some alternatives. But I would like to meet somebody who actually has some interest to really understand where the hurdles and obstacles are before having a really extended conversation about changing time. So I'm all for keeping our time now, but I would like to look a little further into it to see if there's maybe more diversity out there, and if there's some obstacles, what that might look like. And I'm all for having more public participation.
Well, I agree with everybody else so far, and I think, you know, for me, 2:30 works well. It's easy because of my work situation. I'm right down the street. I get, you know, kind of work when I want to work, and I know it's not the same for everybody. But if we move it to night, I coach soccer. I do all sorts of things in the evenings with kids and other programs. So I don't know. I think that's harder for me personally. But if we're going to consider changing, I could make it work. But I'd want to make sure that there's really a demand for it out there. And I've juggled schedules with parents and kids forever as a soccer coach and many other things. And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter when you slot it, somebody's going to have a conflict.
I think evenings are really very difficult for families. And so maybe it's not an evening discussion, maybe it's an early morning discussion, you know, right when kids get dropped off. I know that we have board meetings at 8 a.m. and we moved them. They were at 7:30, but that was drop-off time, and so we moved our meetings. But yeah, I'd like to meet a few people who's interested in the commission and really understand.
I can say one of the candidates were all asked that question that were interviewed. One of the candidates is a physical education teacher. And that person said that they knew that their principal, since it's one time a month, she already knew that the answer would be yes, that the time could be taken off. It's interesting with timing. When I was on the Human Rights Commission years ago, we had a commissioner who felt that our meeting at 3 o'clock was losing the people that were working, that couldn't come and make comments to us. So they requested that we try a meeting at 6 o'clock in the evening. And we were at that time still in the main chamber. We weren't in the large conference room where we are. And Lee Bono was our liaison at the time, and it was put out and publicized. And we held the meeting, and not one person came from the public. And we canceled the meeting because we didn't have any major agenda to do with it. It was an experiment. We tried, and didn't even get one person coming. And it was put out there, and it was put on to Channel 17, and we did get a piece in the paper about it. And just, so they decided, let's leave it where it is then, which we did. But there will be times that I think that we can at least address it in the future, of seeing about mourning or something, but I can at least go back and say the consensus of this body is to leave it alone. And the people that were interviewed all said they could be here.
Do you want to make that a motion?
And what would it do with your schedule?
Well, if we move meetings to 5 o'clock, you know, right now with my son still being in middle school, our program ends at 6 o'clock. So if I have to pick him up by 6 o'clock, otherwise, it's like any other parent, I have to pay when I'm late picking him up. You know, we charge a fee, and at 6:45, if they haven't picked up, our policy is they go to the police department for child abandonment, so. Our meetings have to be in 55 minutes, you know, so.
How are his grades?
He's coming to summer camp this summer.
So could I have a motion that we accept, that we keep it the way it is for the time being?
I'll move that we keep our meeting as is.
A second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Okay, we can pass that on. Thank you. Good discussion. Reports and requests, commissioner comments. Alan, do you have anything?
I have nothing else to add today.
Travis?
Nothing.
Carol?
I just wanted to comment on the pickleball event. It was a great success, and I was very happy and excited that they brought it out to the community to expose the community to this new indoor recreation, and I think it should do really well out there. I hope the community takes to it and enjoys it.
Vicki, at some point in time, a while back, we had talked about maybe having maintenance come in and talk to us about where we stood with the tree program, and if they could, for our next meeting, come back and talk to us about that. I would love to know where we stand with the grass. It is looking absolutely horrible, and I mean, Ruth Hardy Park looks like half of it is yellow and half of it is green, and I'm not understanding, because they're watering a lot, at least during times of the day when people are generally coming to the park. And if we get there by 8 o'clock in the morning, it's still being watered, but a lot on the periphery, not on the center. So if we could have them come and talk to us about it, if it's something other than water, you know, what's going on. But that, and I think where we stand with the tree program, I forget if it was,
Are you talking about the tree replacement?
yeah,
2 to 1.
Removal and replacement.
just kind of where we are with it. You know, are we 50% through it, or 10%, or?
And what she just said was, the comment that it was 2 to 1 on the trees.
Yeah. That's all I have.
David?
I spend a lot of time out at Demuth Park, and I do think that the city's done a really nice job of helping with updating some of the sidewalks, and we're going to have the sidewalk around the entire circumference, and they're working on the driveway, and we're coordinating with Little League to try to update and upgrade the snack bar and the area next to it. You know, the building that's adjacent to it. And hopefully we're going to bring that park up to snuff, so that when we bring the kids out, we have kids from throughout the Coachella Valley come to our fields for tournaments that will really be something we can be proud of. We're already proud of it because we have a unique design to our park out there. We have trees, shade trees, all sorts of things that you just don't see at La Quinta and Cathedral City and some of those other places. We have a homesy environment, and it's very nice out there. And we'll just have to keep going, and I'm glad the city's supporting that, and hopefully the commission, if something comes up, I can bring it to you guys.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll just do a really quick Measure J update. At our last meeting, we were going to meet as a subcommittee just to see how we might continue to mobilize or redirect our mobilization. We haven't been able to actually meet as a group to get everyone on the same schedule, so we haven't had that meeting. But I did take it upon myself to contact Commissioner Vogel just to see where Measure J was at, so I'd at least have something to report back. He invited me to have a phone conversation. He said there's lots of information flowing around, and the city, of course, was really challenged with their $6 million and, you know, what to do with their deficit, and they're not even, that doesn't even include the pension money that they're going to have to start to look at over the next 5 and 6 years. I do believe that there was a, let's see what I have here, that the city was awarded a grant for crosswalks and for traffic. And I remember them applying for that grant, and it came up, I believe, at one of the meetings I had attended. And I don't know what the status of the PS1 program would be through Measure J if indeed that grant was secured for crosswalks and for traffic. So I haven't made contact on the phone with Commissioner Vogel. We've just been text messaging back and forth, but I suspect I'll have more information next month, and hopefully our group will have met. I don't want to say it's asleep right now. I think the city is really looking at much larger budget issues and really not looking at Measure J money per se and projects. I still am a firm believer that should Parks and Recs be in the running for that money or continue, that it really needs to be a very narrow focus. I think $2 million will go very, very quickly if indeed that money gets secured. That's my update on Measure J.
Thank you. I got a call from a former commissioner of ours from CAUS, ILO, the other day, and he said that he went over to Duluth Park and he was very bothered with the sidewalks there. He said they did not meet ADA compliance. There's no curb dips in the areas on them. He said if you go over there, you'll see it. I don't know how they were able to do this, but he said they did not put the dips that are supposed to be in under ADA compliance for people. Again, this was what he asked me to pass on. I haven't gone over and looked yet.
I do know that was an issue, because I remember when they first put the first section in, it was on the west end near the soccer fields, and I'm looking at this strip of sidewalk going and thinking, how does someone gain access to it? And so they were actually, as it was going around, cutting out sections to where they would have the area. Someone could park in the parking lot, get up on that road, and then basically just go around the whole park. I know it's an issue. I've talked with the inspector that's on that project, and they're going back reconfiguring things. So they are making it ADA compliance. It's just that it wasn't done apparently correctly in the plans from
Yeah,
what I understood. So.
As long as it's being done, huh?
Yeah. That's why when I made a note, and
Looks
when you
nice.
brought it up, I
Yeah.
thought, wait a second, CAUS said, would you please make sure you make.
But I'll get an update from the inspector, just to, because I know him and I've had a few conversations, because those were some of my concerns. Of course, they were, when they were doing a lot of the legwork, they were changing out irrigation heads, and apparently didn't let the contractor know the type of irrigation heads they put in. And I had a big tournament. I came to the ball fields and my fields were flooded because the irrigation was running, and it was like, first of all, why is the irrigation running? And they want to blame the contractor, but if you hadn't had the irrigation on, my field wouldn't have been flooded. So, you know, I'm spending with another person hours trying to clean water off the field so we can get games going. And, you know, we've had ongoing issue, and all of a sudden I'm getting calls, the lights aren't on. It's like, I haven't touched the timer. Well, the contractor cut the wires that they thought went to the irrigation, but actually went to the light controllers. So it took them like a couple of days to figure that out. So we finally got that problem fixed,
Well,
so.
when he called me, if you remember, he was real good on dotting the i's and crossing the t's when he would walk the parks. So that's why I said I definitely bring it up. I wanted to just piggyback on what Carol was talking about when I went to the pickleball piece going on at the Desert Highlands Park community. There were men and women in there playing who probably had not been to that building before, who don't live in the neighborhood, and they were interacting. And to see seniors and teenagers playing together.
Right.
And the idea, I mean, it's also from a standpoint as far as culture, as far as people, for this being multiracial, all the above. I said to Carol, standing in there for an hour, you could say, wouldn't it be nice if the whole world was like this? Because it absolutely was amazing to watch. Everybody just had a great time together. And what Dean has created here, I think, and helped with, is bringing people into the neighborhoods that have not been around before and getting to know each other.
Right.
So it's serving a lot more than just playing pickleball.
You're
It's
right.
people learning. And there were people, you said he was 80-some years old?
86.
And there were teenagers on the court. It was, yeah, it was rather amazing to watch. It was pretty special.
That's
So.
good.
Comments from you?
No, I think I've given you my comments for today, so.
You did it well, too. Thank you.
I have none.
Anything else? We stand adjourned.
Okay, it did get cold. Let's go warm up outside.